coming. My name is Ramya. I'm the Citizen Science Coordinator for the Biscayne Community Foundation. As many of you know, every month we have a lecture on different science, environmental topics. This is our first lecture for the fall semester. And today we have with us Nathan Moyer. He is the co-founder of Free Plastic, which is an organization, a nonprofit that they started with by collecting trash on the beach and deciding, rather than just like putting that all in trash bags and sending it off to a landfill, which isn't really all that much better than it sitting on the beach, they were looking into how they could actually use it and repurpose it. And so they've started making all kinds of different things. He'll tell you about it out of the plastic that they collect from the beach. If you want to be on our mailing list so you know about future lectures or events, I have a sign-up sheet in the back. And with that, I'll hand it off to you, Nate.
Well, I got to mute my phone first. Thank you. I'm Nathan Moyer. This is Amancio Paradella, hiding on the side. We are the founders of Free Plastic. Our mission is to use ocean plastic, plastic pollution, and community plastics and actually begin recycling it back into usable products, works of art, materials, building materials that we could use to keep this stuff out of landfills, keep it out of the incinerators, and give it a life again. We got started on this from working with a couple of clients who are beach cleanup people. Our first project was we used plastic pollution from Eula Johnson in Broward, mixed with some other post-consumer single-use plastics. We mulched it and we turned it into our Key Biscayne trophies, which are 60-40 split of old plastic and new plastic, and these were given out for the Key Challenge Awards at the end of this past school year for the Citizen Science Project. And we made 30 of these trophies, and so far rave reviews. We're going to be working with the Children's Trust to make trophies for them as well. We're under contract with them, and we will be making new, bigger trophies for this year's Key Challenge as well. Our clients, one of our clients is a beach cleanup group called Son of a Beach Cleanup, and they work mostly in Broward area. And while working with her to develop her brand and logo and entity, we started seeing all of these photos of what she was pulling up out of the ocean on a daily basis. She stops almost every day after work and does buckets and buckets of plastic out of the ocean. And that's Pearl, her community service dog. So Desiree and the two of us got together and formed Free Plastic. Desiree is our plastic farmer. We send her out to farm plastic naturally from the ecosystems and the environments. So she brings us ocean plastic, we sort, separate, and then we produce new. As you can see, a lot of these photos are just, the coastlines here are just turning into plastic. The rack lines are completely filled with microplastics. We have plastic bottles washing up from all over the world. One of them that we find quite a bit is actually from Hispaniola, and these are the shredded versions of them, but they're little yellow vinegar bottles that are sold as single-use cleaners in Haiti and Dominican Republic. And you just rip them open, use whatever, and throw it away. It ends up in the Gulf Stream, and then it washes up on our shores. We find all kinds of fun, weird stuff. And we get delivered all of this. So what we've been trying to do is figure out a way to sort this plastic and make something new out of it. Bottle caps are one of our favorite pieces to find, as you can see here, there. Bottle caps are actually polypropylene plastic, and they're one of the easiest plastics out there to recycle. There are some organizations that do recycle bottle caps. Some Whole Foods have little bins at the front of the store from, what's the name of the? From Preserve. And it's called the Gimme 5 program, and they accept any kind of bottle caps that you have. I contacted them, and they said that they would accept beach bottle caps as well, even though they are dirty and filled with some life. You give them a quick rinse, they'll accept them. So we have been encouraging a lot of the cleanup groups like Son of a Beach, Surfrider, Fill-A-Bag to sort out these and get them back into the recycling stream instead of just staying in the waste stream. It's frightening sometimes to see how much is coming out of the ocean. This isn't over years of collecting. This is a toothbrush a day easily for one person. And I mean, the amount of bottle caps that come from a single cleanup is astounding. Amancio and I went out right before Dorian came through, and I think we spent about 1 hour on the sand and only about 10, 20 feet of rack line, and we got 232 bottle caps, and that was only a small portion of the, I think, 7 kilograms of plastic that we pulled out that day. So yeah, there are organizations all up and down Florida's coast that are cleaning the plastic out of the oceans, and some are making art out of it, and some are putting it into whatever garbage can is available. Which is amazing and wonderful, but we thought, what if we could actually do something with it? Yes, we have an amazing collection of plastic here. This is our plastic farmer, Desiree. She is a chair on the Surfrider Broward, and she's at a board meeting tonight, so she wasn't able to join us. So this is what 232 bottle caps looks like, and those are supremely easy to recycle, to turn into 100% recycled products. We have them stored and waiting to go. You can go to the next one. And what we found, this was actually the day that we were walking in the rack line at Eula Johnson, and what we found was that even though we're going through and we're picking up the big plastics you can see in our bag, the bottle cap here, you can see a little of the ring that comes off a bottle cap there. Click to the next one. As you zoom in, you start to see more and more microplastics present. All of these are small, teeny tiny, ready to recycle microplastics. So that is one of the future programs that we're working on, and what we want to do is find a way to easily, mechanically separate out the sargassum and seaweed that's in the rack line from the actual microplastics. So we are experimenting with that now because those would be extremely easy to use. And we have to watch out because plastic is evolving. It's getting trickier and trickier to spot. And there is now plastic growing on our beaches. Sneaky one. So, yeah, there's an aquarium plant, and apparently they're all over the coast. As soon as we posted that photo on Instagram, we had other beach cleanup people chiming in, oh, I just found one of those too, and then they're sharing photos. So one of the reasons that we wanted to start Free Plastic and to do this is because we're in a recycling crisis at the moment. I'm sure you've heard that China is no longer buying our plastics, our waste. Well, it turns out the more videos and articles and everything you read, things weren't actually being recycled properly in the first place. A lot of it was just being burned, hopefully at least for waste to energy, but that isn't always the case. So WLRN in July of last year tells us the waste management contracts with most of the cities of Broward County have provisions that allow the hauler to decide if the recyclables go to a recycling plant or if they go to the landfill. That means that the truck that picks up your plastic can decide where that plastic is going to go. And that includes your glass bottles, your cardboard, everything you've thrown in there. Because of this and the price jumps for recycling programs, Deerfield Beach suspended its curbside recycling program completely, and the city of Sunrise says that their recyclables will be treated at a waste-to-energy incineration plant as opposed to paying the extra money and signing a contract where the hauler gets to decide. Following that, in December of last year, WLRN told us that Miami-Dade County has only an 18% recycle rate for their collected waste. This number, if you go through the article, all of these articles are on our website. You can get to them and read them yourself. This article goes on to tell us that there is some skewed numbers when it comes to how much of your percent is getting recycled versus incinerated or landfilled. and that's based off of construction sites because that necessarily isn't tracked by the same entity that's creating these figures. So if construction sites, which they are very incentivized to recycle, if they are recycling, then that is a better number. But I believe Miami-Dade was the lowest last year in all of Florida for recycling. And then on our next article, this is ABC's Local 10. This is Local 10 for Broward. In February of 2019, Local 10 tells us that there aren't buyers for glass and that broken glass can contaminate the entire load of recyclables. This leads to contaminated recyclables that would end up going to landfill or hopefully at least waste to energy where it's incinerated to FPL or something like that. So wishful recycling and improper recycling programs, the single bin, can just destroy the chances of recycling anything, and then it's all back into the garbage stream. And then Scientific American, May of this year, reported that the single stream recycling can limit the ability to recycle a large majority of the recyclables within. Glass is crushed, liquids contaminate paper, actual garbage and food waste contaminates it, and the wrong plastics are included. And all of this makes recycling more costly, less efficient, and in the end, potentially impossible. In the same article, Waste Management discusses how humans hired to sort the mixed recyclables are not willing to show up every day, and quote, many quit within hours of their first day. Manual sorting is going to die off for big recycling, and this article was looking at if robots would actually be able to do that. So the bottom line with these articles is that our recyclables are not being recycled, and some cities in South Florida don't even waste the time, money, or energy to attempt to recycle it, and instead they're going straight to landfill or straight to waste to energy. And then we have a wonderful article from CNN, June of 2019. 633 divers collected 1,500 pounds of trash at a Florida beach in a morning, and they set a new world record. Our plastic farmer, Desiree, was there, and her husband single-handedly pulled 35 pounds of lead pollution from just fishing lines from under the pier. So she delivered some of this world record pollution to us, and this is what we got. This is what she delivered to us from that world record. We got 9 single-use water bottles, 2 single-use plastic cups, 1 single-use plastic fork, 5 pieces of small or microplastics. Those are peppered through. 1 plastic laundry detergent bottle, 1 plastic sunscreen bottle, 1 plastic and rubber beach soccer ball, and a single-use pine pallet. That pallet was in the water. That pallet was taken out of the ocean, and it's brand new. We work with a lot of wood. I'd be shocked if this was used more than once. So this actually opened the door to us with a new material. We started using ocean wood as well. The first hurdle that we had to get over was learning how to sort and figure out what plastics are what and what plastics are safe to be working with. So this is our very early stage of in our backyard, just trying to recycle. At first we did decide that sometimes color would tell you what kind of plastic it is. That doesn't work. Luckily, bottle caps, like I said, they almost always are polypropylene. So much so that's why the preserve company does any bottle cap is good. And then we have, of course, our plastic bottles, which are PET. So when we started sorting them, the easy way to look is you flip it over, look on the bottom of the container, see if there's a number on it. If there's a number on it, that tells you exactly what kind of plastic it is. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is chewed up, pre-mulched, just beaten up by the weather, or it was never given a number to start. And so we have our float tests that we use, which will be the next slide. So these are our basic plastics. These are thermoplastics 1 through 6. PET doesn't float in anything. So PET and PVC can seem like they could be confusing, but PVC is specifically used for plumbing and things like that. You rarely find it in any kind of other products. One note, we also do not work with PVC as far as remelting or baking of any kind. PVC, if I'm right, which we'll get to later, PVC lets off hydrogen chloride when you start to melt it. Even when it's just malleable, you're releasing hydrogen chloride and you could kill yourself. So PVC is out, and PVC goes into what we consider our plastic number 7 bin, which is a kind of catch-all for plastics that can't be recycled safely. So everything else here, plastic number 2 and number 4, polyethylenes, they are low density and high density. They can actually be commingled. They are the same plastic. It's just a matter of how they've been manufactured. You can sort those out from polypropylene very easily. And then you see polystyrene and PET. Those two have the same float properties when working with just water and oil, which are what we try to stick to. We don't want to go through floating in 4 different liquids. So the way you can tell PET from polystyrene is polystyrene breaks. So as soon as you like bend it, it won't go and it just snaps. That's your polystyrene. And that's like your red Solo cups and things like that. So you can go on to the next one. So just as far as safety goes, we found some research from a French team that had gone through the different melting points and temperature ranges and what chemicals were being released while you were doing this. This was eye-opening for us. Majority of it is fairly safe as long as you're using a respirator and well-ventilated space. The one that we didn't know about was the hydrogen bromide that's released from PET, which is plastic number 1. That's your plastic water bottles. So if you mess up and get plastic number 1 to the point where it's on fire for combustion, then you are releasing hydrogen bromide, which is similar to hydrogen chloride, and that can get nasty. So we have this for reference. This helps us with our cooking temperatures and then also what we need to watch out for. And as you can see, also PVC is not on here because we're not even going to go down that path. All right, so this is our basic process. When we first started, we didn't know anything about rebaking plastics at all. We didn't know that you could take something out of the ocean and make a brick of plastic out of it with a conventional oven that cost $5. So our first system was we would collect our plastics from our farmers, sort it out, and we would feed it through our shredder. When we were starting out, we did a makeshift paper shredder. This is the same $50 shredder that you would have in your office to shred paper. We dismantled it, probably took off some of the safeties, and built a container that would allow us to feed it through and shred plastic into a usable mulch. So at this point in our development, we were taking my history from working on boats. I used to build boats in Broward County, and boats are made out of plastic as well. Fiberglass, epoxy, polyester, vinyl ester, those are all plastics, and that's where some of my background came from. We mashed that up with these thermoplastics, and we created the trophies. So these trophies were the 60-40 split, is the best that we were able to do with the small shredder. So what that means is it's 60% new plastic epoxy. Epoxy is fairly safe and easy to work with. And then it's 40% post-consumer or ocean plastic. And we created these. We did a total of 30 of them. 25 of them got delivered to students last year. So it was 25 grams per trophy, if anybody wants to do the math, 25 times 30. So we took out a good chunk of plastic by doing that, and you can go on. How it all works is once we've shredded it, we have to build a mold. For these trophies, we shaped Key Biscayne out of clay. Pretty simple, straightforward to do. Built a little box for it, set it in the box, and then we poured silicone in. And silicone gave us a mold that was completely reusable. We've done well over 30 out of this mold, because there were a lot of errors and mistakes. But we did 2 molds. You can see on the left is the Key Biscayne, and on the right is the base of the trophy. So it's a straightforward task to do this, and you can get as creative as you want as well, as long as you know how to use the epoxies. And so we made a bunch of them, and we had fun, and then we gave them out to the children. And from all the photos we got from Romeo and the foundation, it looked like they were a hit. So like I said before, we're going to be making more, a little bigger, a little different variations, but we're going to have some fun with them. This is actually our first test run. I didn't know if our idea of using epoxies with these unrecyclable plastics was going to be possible. So obviously we didn't want to invest a ton, so we found this little $1 fish at Michael's, and it's made out of plaster on the left, and we made a silicone mold out of it, and then we poured it with plastic, and he's sitting right here. We also made, and I'll pass these around a little bit with the lights on, we also made a porpoise and a whale and a frog, and they were successful. I think the next one is Desiree. Yeah. So Desiree fell in love with them, and she started taking them to her beach cleanups, and people really liked them, which then led us to meet Brenda at the Museum of Discovery and Science in Broward County in downtown Fort Lauderdale. They invited us to come and do a workshop with all of the kids and, well, the families that came for World Ocean Cleanup Day. And I believe they had 1,500 visitors, and we took over their whole makerspace lab with all of our equipment and showing people how you can recycle plastic in about 3 or 4 different ways. And then we were also making our little fishies for the children. So for that event, I believe we did 82 fishies, and all of the kids that came, if they wanted one, they got a little fishy. So this is the close-up of what it looks like, the mix of kind of like orange, so there's a lot of orange in here. This is your 60-40 split of the epoxies and the unrecyclable plastics, and this is actually a more refined selection of unrecyclable plastics because as we've been growing and moving and learning more, that definition unrecyclable has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. So what we're looking at now as far as unrecyclable plastics is packaging that has lots of glue and labels on it, say pill containers that you have to pop through. Broward and Miami-Dade has their regulations say that they can accept any plastic that has a number on it, and then they also do include straws with that. So between those, with that capability with the county's big recycling, unrecyclable is not as easy to come by for us as it was. The bigger plastics, that we've been coming across are pieces from cars, ABS plastics, and they actually have a lot of plant growth on them and life on them. Those are also considered unrecyclable, and those go into the shredder and then into our epoxies pores. So jump to the next one.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Question. One of the plastics that irritates me the most in my trash is the clamshells.
Oh yeah, polystyrene, styrofoam.
No, they're
PET.
the clear white or clear plastic. I think they're number
With the
one.
strawberry.
Oh yeah.
But
Okay.
at least where we used to live, they wouldn't recycle it.
Yeah, they.
So it just fills up your.
Up until recently, Broward had a rule that it was only narrow neck containers. Yeah. So luckily, when I think it might coincide with when Waste Management bought out the recycling companies, they've actually moved that to take anything with a number on it. So as long as you're on the county, you should be able to recycle those. But all of the counties have cheat sheets online, and you can find
But I
them.
didn't
No,
see
that's not
much in-
recyclable. That's not, all the clamshells are not.
Those aren't recyclable down here? Okay. Yeah, so one of the reasons why you won't see that in our images from the ocean is they don't float. So if they end up in the water, they don't float in water, they don't float in oil, they don't float. So a lot of the PET actually sinks. The stuff that makes it to shore is bottles that are still tight, screwed tight, and have air in it. They stay on the surf, they come in, and that's what we end up getting, like what you can see on the left here. And then also on the left here, this is the vinegar bottles that are coming in from Hispaniola, and then there's a little white bottle off to the left as well. They also sell, in the same machine makes both bottles, it's just different colors. They also sell chlorine in the same container. So it's just ripped open, squirted wherever they need it, and then eventually, sadly, it ends up in the Gulf Stream, and then we get it.
Epoxy, you mean resin?
Yes, resin. So in the resin world, the three big ones are polyester, vinyl ester, and epoxy. In the 80s, I think it was 80s and 90s, boats and everything were made with polyester and vinyl ester, but those are very toxic and very difficult to deal with, and epoxy is a lot greener to make and greener for the users. So that's the only thing we touch, and we try and stay with the greenest that we can find. So yeah.
Is epoxy recyclable?
So that was one of our tricks, is once we learned more, we found out that epoxy is permanent plastic. You cannot recycle it. Nobody has a way to recycle it. Until last month when we created a way to recycle it. We are able to take any of the trophies that we've made and any other epoxy that's given to us, as long as our machines can handle it, and we can shred it down and make new trophies out of it. So it's similar to a recycling of paper concept. Paper is rarely 100% recycled. It's normally a mix of new and old. We're in the same boat. The best we've been able to do is 50-50 of old and new. And the finer you get the epoxies and the regular thermoplastics, the easier it is. You'll see this better when the lights are on, but this is epoxy dust from all of the drilling and sanding and everything that we have to do to the trophies. We're trying to stay zero waste, so we're actually collecting this and recycling all of that as well.
Do you guys have a pressurizer?
No. For what we're doing, we don't need the structural capabilities that vacuum bags and pressures and stuff like that do. And as far as air bubbles go, we get a ton of air bubbles because the particles of plastic that we're putting in just naturally hold on to it. So we might sit there through the life of the cure, which can sometimes be 30 minutes to 2 hours, with a blowtorch getting the air bubbles out if we need that finished surface, like on our river tables, which I'll show you in a bit. But no, we're keeping it simple for now. So as we've learned all of these, and as we've learned like what you just asked, we realized that we're not actually doing the most beneficial thing for our community by making new plastic, and that there's got to be another way. So we started doing research, and we found this organization in Europe called Precious Plastic, and Precious Plastic is focused on using community plastics. So they're using clean plastics, like plastic bottles that you would use at your house and donate and put into your recycle bin. But they spent years developing a kind of DIY way of mulching it, baking it, and actually turning it into something that's usable. They have gone and released, they're an open source nonprofit. I think they're a nonprofit, but I know they're open source. So all of their research and development is free online. You can go research it, download it. Some of the float test was actually from Precious Plastic, and they have been an amazing resource. So using Precious Plastic as our base for new knowledge, we decided to start looking at thermoplastics as we were looking for a way to recycle thermoplastics 100% and create something that doesn't require the injection of any new plastics into the world. So what we learned was same exact principle: find it, sort it, shred it, and then bake it. All of the plastics have different baking points. Some are as low as 200 degrees Celsius, some go upwards of 350, 390. Right now we're not working with PET, which is plastic bottles, which is a little bit of a pain for us because we have tubs and tubs and tubs of PET sitting around. But we're not working with that one at the moment. One, because if we are off and we ignite it, it's hydrogen bromide. Two, it's the most finicky of the plastics to work with. And then three, it also it oxidizes if you don't have it in a controlled environment. So using a compression oven reduces the amount of oxidation in it, and what happens when it oxidizes is it just turns black. You would never want to buy a product that looks like these things. It just looks burned. So here we're looking at polyethylene. These are pill containers that have come up, and then also some of the vinegar and chloro bottles. And yeah, we've sorted it, and then we put it through the conventional oven. And to test and to make sure that we were able to do this, we went to a thrift store and bought a $5 conventional oven, and that's how we got our little brick. And when the brick comes out of our little baking kit, that's about what it looks like. Then we use our carpentry skills to plane it down and get it into an actual subway tile. You can click on to the next one. So this is Precious Plastics open source machinery that they've created. They're currently about to release, I think, 3 more machines for larger productions. But basically what you got is a shredder, an injector, and a compression. Shredder, all it does is shred, and as long as you keep everything sorted and organized beforehand and after, then you have an unlimited supply of plastic that you can start creating. The injection machine allows for any small molds to be put on. So we are working with a metal worker in Malaysia outside of Kuala Lumpur, and he is sending us subway tiles that are actually designed to the right size so that people could start doing tiled walls with it. We're also getting hexagon tiles. I think if you go to the next one, it'll be there. Yeah. So we're also getting hexagon tiles. The next one I think is triangle tiles, and then the subway tiles. So we're getting those.
Is it a good insulator plastic?
I don't think so.
No.
Not at all. We haven't done a lot of testing as far as building or anything that's really food safe. So as far as the temperatures go, we haven't messed with it, and then actual strength, the tensile strength, we haven't messed with.
Can you walk on those and they're durable, or is it just for walls?
I think you'd be able to walk on them. They are, and we can pass this around. That's what you're gonna that's what you're looking at, and that is actually without compression. So the injection machine allows you to compress and get more air out of it, make a stronger, more unified piece. So once we get the injection going, which hopefully will be in the next few weeks, we'll be able to make the bowls and cups and pots like this as well. The third machine that we're going to be working on as well is the compression oven. The compression oven allows you to do large 2-piece molds, and it's a car jack and heat, and you just compress it down until you get stuff like the bowls. People do platters. Since we're working with Ocean Plastic, we're not going to be selling these as food safe things. We're looking at stuff like planters for flowers and trees and stuff like that. And we're looking for just safer use for these things. We have our cleanup this Saturday, in case anybody's interested. There is a cleanup coming. There is Son of a Beach cleanup and Surf Rider, and then if anybody here knows Manny from Philibag, I'm sure he's going to be there as well. It's at Eula Johnson, and it'll be great. And I'm sure we're going to be getting a ton of plastic from it.
Where is Eula Johnson?
It's on the south side of Port Everglades in Broward. So it's used to be called Jonathan Dickinson, and now it's what's the full name of it?
Johnson State Park.
Okay, yeah. And that was actually the location. Eula Johnson's the location of the first Philibag station in Broward as well. What Manny does at Philibag is he creates stations where you can transform your quick little beach walk into protecting the environment and saving the planet. You can grab a bucket, grab a bag, walk, pick up plastics, bring it back, and all of the stations are located next to garbage cans and whatnot, so you can clean up the beach while you're walking and enjoying it. I think he's at 10 or more stations so far, and I know there's a lot here on Key Biscayne that he's got. So yeah, that was the overview of what's going on. So we actually do have, these are our float tests. So when we go into the sorting process, we got regular vegetable oil and water, and you can see things floating in them right now. We try and do very small clippings of it, and we also try and do this as little as possible because it's so time consuming if you're dealing with 1,000 or 2,000 pieces. After we finished making the trophies, we realized that there was a lot of waste in doing this, that I was going through gloves like crazy. Every time you touch this epoxy, you go through a pair of gloves. Again, we wanted to be zero waste, so we made a trophy out of gloves as well. And this guy, he's kind of ugly. The coloring was a little weird, but I think he was almost an 80-20 because gloves are so thin and so easy to work with. We have been talking with Ann Roth at the Presbyterian School about potentially grabbing the gloves, the single-use gloves that are used for the kids for the art projects and everything, and then using those as well to start recycling those.
What about the gloves from restaurants? Would you take that too?
Possibly. We have to make sure it all works. So we're going to try with the kids first. This first one was very difficult, and the reason those and say plastic bags are difficult is they gum up the machines, our shredders. It just turns to a fine thread and then locks up the shredder, and then you spend hours trying to undo it. That's also why on our list of unrecyclables is rope and netting. Rope and netting just destroys the machinery. So after we made the trophies, we wanted to experiment and see what we could do. So we made a river table concept. This could be turned into a bar. This could be turned into tables, coffee tables, you name it, anything. And this is reclaimed pine from a pallet, and again, a 60-40 split at our current mulch for the river. Playing around with the water idea, we made an ocean table. And we try to get a little gradient in there and turn it into a beach. And as you can see, this big guy here, we then decided to go into wall art a bit. So this is what we call the Plastic Ocean series. And this is a maple pallet that we drug out of the beach as well, cut into the shark, and then covered with, I think it's close to 350 grams of ocean plastic, and then some resin in there as well. So we were playing around with those guys. And continuing with the water theme, we made a lazy river, Susan. So, for some of these products, we don't necessarily have all of the carpentry skills to be able to do it from scratch all the time. So these are actually pre-purchased, and what we do is we will carve in, router out our rivers. We have a lot of different kinds, and then we did this guy last night. This is that close-up that you saw. We do our pour. These are considered food safe, and the reason for that is everything that you see here is going to be covered in another layer of clean epoxy, and then on top of that we use shellac? Yeah, shellac for the finish. So these are food safe. Lazy Susans, as well as cutting boards and everything else.
Also recycled wood?
No, these are not recycled wood. This is birch, right? Yeah, these are birch Lazy Susans that we're just kind of ripping into. We do have a stockpile of live edge and recycled wood that we're going to have some fun with coffee tables and such. So yeah. So these are some of the little guys that we made for the children. And then out of the bake, that's the first time you bake one of the planks like what you've got in your hands. Oh, thank you. So,
Markets for these things, is it going to be hard to market them?
I don't think it will be. We just got our first grant. We are a nonprofit under the Key Biscayne Community Foundation, so we did our first grant with the Awesome Foundation. During the pitch, a trustee hired us to do trophies for her. That's where the children's trust trophies are coming from. The adaptability of this is pretty much universal. What we want to do is we want to create a platform where we can educate people on how it works and teach them the basic steps and then allow them to run with it as much as they want. Any carpenter would be able to work with this. Routers cut through this beautifully, thickness planers, jigsaws, you name it. This is pressed, rebaked plastic is so perfect. We think it can scale out to just about any kind of artist, any kind of craftsman.
Sorry, maybe you said it before. Did you want a special oven
For him?
to melt for everything?
Yes, eventually we will. Eventually we're gonna have the compression oven, and all that is though is a regular oven that you would use in your house with a couple modifications, like adding a car jack to it, to get the compression going while you heat it. A lot of those plastics, well no, two of the plastics, you just set it to 350 and wait, and compress and you're good to go.
But you need to be very careful to use the right plastics, otherwise you create
Correct.
toxic.
Yeah, correct. So when we do our plastics, we actually sort everything out. These are just small collections of them. Plastic number 1, PET, we're reserving all of this until we get the injection machines. Plastic number 2s, we've been sorting out into color. We've got blue and white here. This guy is filled with plastic number 2, that's all the chloro bottles. And we go through and separate everything. If anything cannot be identified 100%, that goes into what we call our unrecyclables. And that's the only stuff that's going into our epoxy pours. Since we can't recycle it elsewhere, we figure it's acceptable to make something usable out of it. Yeah?
I have one more question.
Sure.
So what do you do with this, you don't like the small plastic bottle?
Well, what do you mean?
The small bottle, you said that you don't.
We're not working with them yet. They're made out of a plastic that's a little tricky to deal with, and that's the one that's a little finicky. The other thing that can be stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fun thing about this is 3 different types of plastic here. You got your cap and your ring. That's polypropylene, which is plastic number 5. That's super easy to work with. The labels are typically polyethylene, which is just like your shopping bags that you would get at the store. And then the bottle itself is PET. So when we're processing these, we're actually taking off the labels, taking off the caps, separating those out, and then also doing the bottles into their own bin. And we will be working with the bottles because they're one of the biggest sources of plastic that we're finding from the ocean.
Is that why the Whole Foods program, that's what I do with my number 5.
The preserve, yeah.
So what do they do with it? Your program is amazingly innovative and creative and sensitive. Your sensitivity translates beautifully.
Thank you.
And yes, kudos. What are they doing, just out of curiosity?
So Preserve actually sells back to, I think, Whole Foods and a handful of other companies. They make toothbrushes. So if you've ever seen like a neon green toothbrush, that's made out of them. They don't only accept the bottle caps. They also accept yogurt containers and yogurt lids and some of those. Yeah. So they have a little group of plastic number 5s. But the reason they're doing that is, like I was saying about the article with the robotic sorting, is if they are accepting any plastics, then they also have to hire people to go through and sort it. And you can't, there's, I don't know if robotic sorting is gonna catch on, but some wonderful genius will hopefully figure it out. Yes, who was it?
Oh, me or drink?
Oh yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, you showed cups earlier. Can you drink out of those cups?
If you are working with, I'd like to call it regular plastic, just post-consumer plastic, yes, people are selling those as being drinking cups and everything else. The process, they get to a high enough temperature, and it's as long as you've washed it before you bake it, then you're fine. Because we're working with pollution, we're not touching anything that's going to be labeled as like really food safe unless we're completely coating it in something to protect it. But yes, there are people in this precious plastic network all around the world that are creating usable objects for the kitchen, for the home, for everything. So it's possible, and we'll get there. Yeah.
May I ask you one more question?
Yeah, sure.
please? Is it reasonable to assume that your reference earlier about breakage and spillage that with glass, like our condo, with the single stream program through waste management, eliminated glass collection?
Okay.
And is that because of breakage and contamination?
That, and there's no market for it. There's no, from what I've read on the articles, there's no buyers for glass almost anywhere in the US. It's not just a Florida thing. It's just, it's cheaper and easier to manufacture new glass than it is to pulverize, well, clean, pulverize, and then go
So
again.
are they kidding us by collecting it at where they're
I mean,
collecting
that's what the new contracts are kind of
Yeah.
pointing at, is that it's more cost effective for big recycling to just throw it in a landfill. And,
Talking about stopping it statewide.
Yeah.
what, the recycling program?
Yeah, for glass.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. They also use it to like create sand and stuff, but there's not really a whole lot of, market
Yeah.
for that either.
Paper
Sand
recycling
bags.
and a single bin is just horrible. You don't get any of the paper out of it. It gets contaminated with any little bit of liquid, or even the crushed glass gets into the paper, and you can't work with it. And metal is about the easiest and most reliable one to work with. And plastics, I'm interested. I want to get out to we have one of the largest recycling plants in Pembroke Pines. Is one of the largest in the U.S. And they apparently have pallets of plastic that are ready to go that they can't sell, that just sit there. And I'm interested to get out there and get one of those pallets and see what we can do.
So the things you put in your recycling bin, the glass, the paper, the metal, and the plastics, just the metal and plastics are recycled?
Just the metal is recycled. I mean, paper if it's not contaminated, yeah. The thing that the articles are saying is the contamination.
Yeah, well, who sorts it out to say it's contaminated or not?
Humans that are so miserable they leave within 3 hours of getting their job. Yeah, there's videos. If you go to the website, the Scientific American article on our website, click onto it. I think there's a video of how Waste Management is sorting it out, and it's just a conveyor belt with 15 people, and it's full on everything you've thrown in those bins. It's just going up a conveyor belt, and one person's job is just to pull plastic, and not even sort that type, but just pull plastic, and another one's just pulling metal. So the sorting is, I think, one of the big problems, and the single bin recycling is if we actually could get back to sorting the plastic up front, sorting the materials up front, and then sending them off, we could control the streamline, which is why we're interested in doing local recycling and community-based recycling. I think if we can control our own waste and make something that the community would be interested in and give it back to the community, it would be, we wouldn't have that footprint.
Europe has been recycling for decades, according to type and.
Yeah, they definitely have a better grasp on it than we do. I think we might have made a mistake by going into the single bin because it wasn't always that way, and then now that's just got a foothold. So that's what we're doing.
In the community we lived in 50 years ago, the Stonebelt Center, which was a school and residential facility for retarded sorting operation of
okay.
recycled stuff, and people had jobs.
Yeah.
And they were thrilled with the jobs that they had, and they said they did a beautiful job.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, separating colors of glass and different kinds of plastic. And
Yeah, it's-
tin cans and aluminum cans.
It's definitely a position that just a lot of people could do. We're interested in making sure that anybody that's working with us is compensated. Our farmers are compensated. We're like that's where we want to move.
But see, the city didn't collect it. I can remember collecting myself and over to the Stonebelt Center.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't have to separate it into various things because that was the job that these folks did, and you could watch them. They were very good.
Oh, that's perfect.
at doing it. It seems like if you could mobilize
Yeah.
people like this that were so good at it and so thrilled to be useful,
Mm-hmm.
then it seems like we need to get something like that going for.
Yeah, and I think that touches on one of our future plans, is that we want to create a community centers for people where you have an actual drop-off location on one side of this building or container or whatever. You have a drop-off that when people are dropping off, they're sorting and they're making sure that it's already clean. They put it in the right bin. Inside of the space, you then recycle it into new products, and then on the other side of the space, you can sell it back to the community. If that's done and there is a level of community pride and ownership to the event, to actually recycling, I think our numbers would just skyrocket, and our impact would just be phenomenal. Yes?
I would encourage everyone here to go to the waste management facility to learn how the waste is organized.
Yeah.
They give tours.
It sounds like so much fun. Stinky fun, but
Where
fun.
is it?
By Pembroke Pines.
Yeah, Pembroke Pines has the biggest facility around here, so, yeah. So yeah, that's us. We are trying to make an impact. We're started very DIY, and we are moving to full workshop and full production. Hopefully mobile units where we can go and do workshops with people where they are literally taking plastic waste and creating something new and walking away from it with something new and usable and cherishable at the end.
You know, in New York, the homeless people always pick up the bottles and they still
Yeah.
actually steal copper anywhere they can to recycle it, so they would probably help a lot of homeless people. if
Yeah.
we did something like that.
Yeah, I believe Precious Plastic, who is the Dutch company, I'm pretty sure that they do like a 2 cent per gram or something reimbursement, where as long as you're dropping it off when there's a human present, they weigh it and they pay for it, because it's an asset. I don't want us to be producing more plastic, but the plastic's not going anywhere. This is here forever. So we might as well make something useful and good out of it. Precious Plastic has even gotten to the point where they're doing the equivalent of a cinder block for housing out of plastic. Obviously, this wouldn't necessarily fly in a lot of areas, but they're working in the Maldives, for instance, is their first mobile unit that they created, where they're collecting plastic straight out of the ocean, all of the beaches, all of their landfills, and they're creating new products. But if they got a mold out for the cinder block for the Maldives, that could change things, where you're actually being able to build something huge.
I
Yeah.
think there's a girl in Haiti that she created something called Trash Bank.
Okay.
So people can, to encourage people to pick up trash, she would trade off trash for things that they actually needed.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah, I thought
That's a great idea. I like that. Yeah, we had a friend who was working in Haiti who was teaching everybody how to do the crocheting or knitting of just plastic bags. And so she got a whole team of people down there making them into purses, into all kinds of stuff. It was a great little program. And then we've been experimenting with plastic bags, but where we're going with it is more into the heat and baking world. My sewing skills are non-existent, so there's a very easy way, and you can find it online. There's a very easy way to take like 2 full bags or 4 cut bags and iron them together. And as long as you keep it on a lower heat, it fuses those bags into a workable material that then you can sew through a regular sewing machine and make whatever you want. We got some of those to fuse and work, but then we are not good at sewing, so that's where that stopped. There is also a method, once we have the compression oven, of working with plastic bags similar to kneading dough. You don't have to do compression on it, you just need the heat and a large space. It wilts almost like spinach, and then as long as you have the safety gloves on, you can then knead it and turn it into anything, and then put it into injection molds or compression or anything. Because plastic bags are polyethylene. They're the same exact plastic as plastic number 2, so they're valuable. So, anybody else? Not yet. Not yet. We're working on it.